Hello everyone, welcome to my first ever riftbound video. For those of you who are here from before, who know me, welcome back. Hope you're doing well and hopefully you found a way to fill the void that Legends of Runeterra left in our hearts. I know for me, riftbound has been doing that pretty well. For those of you who are new, welcome. My name is Koki or just Bok here in riftbound. I play a lot of card games. We're going to be mostly talking about Yasuo and my recent performance in regional qualifier Lille, where I got the best of legend for Yasuo. There it is, in all its glory. I finished 18th overall, which is an insane result for such a weak considered legend, but we'll go over that later. I would like to do two disclaimers to start off with. The first one being what we're talking about is going to be mostly for a meta that is about to end, but this information can still be reasonably useful in the upcoming season and further, because a lot of concepts can be applied no matter what. We'll go through the deck list and everything, so stick around. Even if you're not a Yasuo player, there will be a lot of things you might be able to learn. Second disclaimer, you might be wondering why the room is so nice and why the streaming setup is so good. Thank you to my girlfriend Nips. You can see her right there. This is her room, her streaming setup. Thank you for allowing me to use it. You can check her content out on Art by Nips, as it says again over there. With that out of the way, today we'll do 3-4 parts. In the first part, we'll cover myself as a player, my previous experiences, to get some backstory and, more importantly, understand better how much of the success behind my result might have been my personal skill and my knowledge of the game versus the actual deck list itself. Obviously, the result is a combination of the two things, but I think having that information will help you decide yourself how much each of those things helped. After that, we'll go over the rough concepts about Yasuo itself, why I think it's good, why I think it's much better than people give it credit for, what its upsides are in the current meta, which can again be translated to later metas when certain situations arise. And then the main part of the video will be going through the actual deck, through all the card choices, why they're made, how the battlefields work, the chosen champion, everything, all of that good stuff. And then we'll wrap up with the sideboard plan. Like I said, I'm Koki. I used to play Legends of Runeterra competitively for like 3 years, let's say. I used to stream almost every single day. Competitively, I was decently good, I want to say. I had a couple of seasonal top cuts. I was in a Worlds qualifier once, I believe, and I was representing Team Serbia, which is where I'm from, on one of the European Opens. I'm going to blame the lack of like any larger success due to me being primarily a content creator there. I really didn't try to do any special practice and prep. Most of the tournaments and stuff was done on stream. I was even doing live streaming without a delay in the seasonal tournaments, which obviously gets you in a position where you can get sniped and stuff, but that doesn't matter. So I have a lot of card game experience. I also played some Magic the Gathering, some Hearthstone. I just got into Flesh and Blood recently, mostly on the side for fun. To Riftbound specifically, I've been playing since the game came out, end of last year. I want to say slightly over 100 best of 3 matches. And I have almost 80% win rate of them. Almost all of them were on Yasuo, so I played Yasuo throughout the whole Season 1, most of Season 2, except for preparing for Bologna, which is where I played Irelia, but I was in the same colors, so similar play patterns arise. Other than one regional qualifier, one skirmish, I think, and one Nexus Knight. Everything else is Yasuo. But yeah, in Bologna I played Irelia. I was confident in my skills in the colors, and it was a pretty decent deck. I ended up going 55th, which is a decent result considering I don't have that much time to practice nowadays, now that I stopped doing content full-time. But pretty satisfied with the result. I was mostly aiming for top 64, hoping to get a medal, but didn't get that. And then now in Lille, I went, like I said, 18th, which required 11 and 2 result. Yeah, in Bologna, I went 10 and 3, so Yasuo managed to get a better result than Irelia. One of the reasons I switched was because of these advantages of Yasuo compared to Irelia, other than just being easier to get a metal card that we will talk about soon. Okay, for next part, I would like to talk about why Yasuo, and I will split this into 4 categories again. First, we'll go over what I'm looking for in a deck. Second, why Yasuo/Irelia fits that criteria. Third, I will go over why not Irelia. And fourth, the head-to-head that I think Yasuo has advantages over Irelia. So what I look for in a deck is usually the person that is dedicated to a specific thing and plays it for a long time. So I'm happy I found the thing that I really like here pretty fast. First thing I played was Yasuo, and I've been playing it ever since. I need skill expression, mid-ranginess, I don't know how to word that specifically, but I need the deck to not have polarizing matchups. I need it to have an adaptable game style based on what you're playing against, and I needed to be able to have build varieties, and I think Yasuo fits into all of these things. So I think in all of those regards, purple green is where I want to be. Definitely purple, but I think green is a good supplement. I think it's objectively true that purple is the most skill expressive color in Riftbound. There's a lot of modularity when it comes to cards you can use in a lot of cool ways. Like Ride the Wind, for example, use it to conquer in their turn, you can use it defensively, you can use it defensively, you can use it to go in and out of the same battlefield multiple times, etc. I think the movement part of Riftbound is very cool. Definitely what I was after. Green as a supplement color in purple, I think fits the best because other archetypes are too, I don't know how to say it, build around the... Irelia has this problem as well. If we're going towards blue, Teemo is its own archetype. There's not much you can do to floop around there. Red decks don't have a lot of synergies. Jinx kind of does, but Draven and Annie, for example, they're missing the synergy part that I actually care about a lot. They just play a bunch of good cards and they just say my card is better than your card and I win because of that. Obviously, there's still skill expression stuff. I prefer having my cards work together to create these advantages rather than just having a good card that it just does the thing better than yours, and that's it. Having, for example, the counter spells for green and the buffs and similar things gives me the flexibility that I need in both deck building and in play, where my skill as a player can shine through. The next part will do why not Irelia. As I said before, I played Irelia in Bologna. The problem I had with Irelia is I noticed from my performance and from performance of most of the Irelia players in basically all the tournaments, it's not always or not even often that the best Irelia pilots are the best performing ones. And that puts me off of the deck a lot. I think in a lot of other decks, if you see the best pilot, for example, for Ezreal or Kai'Sa, or especially the Miracle decks, mostly due to the consistencies and just how the decks function, the best player is almost certainly gonna be the best performing one in a tournament. And I don't think that was true for earlier players. Maybe I'm just biased because I didn't get the result that I wanted from Bologna, but I think the main reason that happens is deck is hiddenly kind of like Aurora, where a lot of matchups end up basically just being a hand check. You need to have specific cards in your deck. You not only need to draw them specifically, you need your opponent to not draw their cards specifically. So yes, the deck is pretty complex, there is a lot of play to it, there's a lot of math, a lot of sequencing, a lot of that stuff, which I'm generally pretty good at, so I don't think that is the biggest problem. It happened to me personally, and I've seen it happen to other players where there's an obvious skill discrepancy between you and the opponent, and the match goes one or the other way just based on the draw. For example, in early mirrors, even when I can see that my opponent doesn't know what they're doing almost at all, the games are very losable if the opponent draws Telecorn and you don't, or the other way around if you're playing versus someone that is a lot better. If you just draw a lot of Guardian Angels versus a Kai'Sa or a Viktor and stuff, then you just win. And then next game you might not draw the Defies, and the Viktor just draws triple Call the Weak, and even if you're the best player in the world and the Viktor player has no clue what they're doing, you just lose, right? And I feel like that kind of play pattern I don't enjoy, and I don't think is covering the skill expressive part, even though a lot of times you do win with Irelia, it is very satisfying, and it is... The deck is obviously pretty difficult and it is skill expressive, but there are a lot of these moments in specific matchups, which happen quite often, that it's not really a game that you're oh, I won this because I was just better than the opponent, or a lot of times it's, oh, I just drew this way and the game was just over. I think Yasuo covers that part pretty well. That is one of the reasons why I ended up sticking with Yasuo. So to go through the full list of what I think Yasuo does better than Irelia, the first one is the non-volatility when it comes to matchups. I think it has a more flat matchup table. Obviously, I don't have like a ton of experience. You would need like hundreds and thousands of games overall to know that for certain, but that's just how it seems like to me from the little experience I have. The next one would be the openness of deck building. Irelia doesn't do the deck building part that well. You can choose what you put in lists and what kind of a list you tend to build to an extent, but I think Yasuo does it much better. It might be due to the fact that Irelia just has too many powerful cards. It just creates these chains of dependencies, which I don't really like doing. For example, for the deck to make sense, you need to play around your chosen champion. You need a lot of protection for it, and you need a lot of like mobility to be able to utilize it efficiently. So you end up needing to play basically a lot of these cards. Like, for example, Guardian Angel, you need to play it over Zhonya's because targets, you need a lot of protection for your champ. Then you need a lot of mobility, so you need to play Boots, and you don't have room for specific other things because the deck space is just that constricted. I think Yasuo is much better at doing that, which is why Yasuo is allowed to be built in a way that is better suited for the current meta. I had a pretty good read on the meta after the ban lists. I thought it was very obvious that the Draven in the previous meta, the Draven champion itself, the 4-mana one, was keeping the aggressive starts from decks at bay. A lot of decks weren't allowed to flourish because you are not allowed to just play a 2-drop and go in and play some protection for it because Draven just beats those hands. And with him being gone, I thought it was obvious that that kind of game plan is going to be much stronger than it used to be. A lot of games that play more to the early game, for example, like Annie, are the real winners of the ban. I think you need to build decks with that idea in mind. Specifically, I think Irelia is allowed to do that a lot less than Yasuo is. I think Yasuo not only inherently plays better with early game because Irelia is not really allowed to use the legend early because using a power early is horrendous. Obviously, sometimes it's very good and you do get to use it, but like a very common thing that Yasuo does is 2-drop plus 2-drop into legend on turn 2, doing a double conquer, and that is very strong, and that is kind of what we're looking to do in the current meta, which is populated by a lot of 2-drops and fighting for that early game prevalence. So that flexibility in building, I think, favors Yasuo more than Irelia. The next thing that I would like to point out in the head-to-head would be the mana efficiency, which I just brought up an example of why the early game thing matters. But a lot of it does come from the legend, obviously. A, you're not allowed to use it early game, and B, once you reach the later stages of the game, which the deck does want to go to, you are a couple of runes down because you've been recycling the whole time. If you go into a fight, specifically in the mirror, Irelia versus Yasuo, from my experience, you go to these fights, which usually, if you played a lot of these mirrors, you know there's one important fight, and who wins that basically wins the game. And because a lot of times you both get to choose when you want to fight and when you want to dodge because of how the movement stuff works. At some point, you're going to need to be forced to fight. That is usually late game because the person who is behind is going to be choosing to avoid the fight. So when you do get to this fight, I feel like I'm always up on cards, and I'm always up on mana because of the legend choice. It's not just the legend, obviously, it's the Guardian versus Zhonya, you being able to utilize Stalacorn more efficiently because Irelia needs to spend the cards to move the Stalacorn back from a battlefield, whereas you can just go Conquer, pay 2 mana, pull it back. We're chilling, Stalacorn is safe, we drew 2 cards, super good. I think with my record of beating 5 Irelias in the tournament and losing to a 6th one, which No Flame, I believe, was the worst out of the 6 Irelia players that I played, even though they were pretty decent. I think I've proven, at least to myself, that the Yasuo is very favored in the matchup due to the things that I just mentioned. Mana efficiency, the early game prevalence, which is pretty important right now, and the third one being you being able to dictate when the fight happens better because you don't have to sacrifice power or cards to pull away from battlefields, so you get to tap out more. I guess another small thing would be the meta right now, I think there was stats that Rebukas was one of the, if not the most played card in the tournament. Even though you get some hate from Irelia sideboard options, but for example, I'm never sad when they rebuke my Irelia because they recycle 3 mana because the deflect. But we don't go that tall, and we usually have a lot of units, so we're usually fine when that happens. Whereas our rebuke going down versus Irelia is usually game losing. So there's a lot of small edges here that I believe make Yasuo not only a pick for the metal chase, but I think it is just better positioned overall. Not power level wise, I think power level wise, Irelia is still a stronger deck, but in the current meta, I believe there's enough advantages to Yasuo where he is worth picking over Irelia, and I think that such metas might occur again in the future, so keep an eye out for those. Okay, so as you can see, this is the deck list. This is the exact list that I brought to Lille that gave me my success. And I think this kind of a list, or something pretty close to it, is optimal for the current meta, which, like I said before, is coming to an end now, but there might be a similar meta in set 3 or further down the line, which means this sort of a game plan and logic might be very important later on. The way I see everything in this is I think there's 2 distinct plans in this deck, and I think the classical question of who's the beatdown will answer which of these 2 parts you want to lean on more than the other. These 2 parts are the aggressive part and the more scaling late game part of the deck. The more aggressive part is the 9 2-drops we play, the masks, the buffs, and the legend to help us conquer more efficiently. We can use it, that part of the deck, to establish early game dominance, either because we want to end the game faster ourselves or to stop the opponent from ending the game fast themselves. We have battlefields. 2 of our battlefields play into that part of the game plan. So both the Target Speak and the Seat of Power are very good for the deck that can utilize early game better, and we should do it that better than most decks. The second part of the deck would be the Stellacorns, the Irelias, the Irelia Light package, essentially. And that part is very good in our deck, specifically because Stellacorn works really well with our Legend, and it works really well with a lot of Ride-the-Winds, where we play Triple Tide Turner. So with a lot of these synergy cards, which we play anyway, we do get almost the same amount of benefits as something like the Irelia deck does, while not sacrificing the early game part. So balancing these 2 parts of the deck, I think, is integral to winning, and knowing which part to lean on, in what sense, in which matchup, is the key to winning. The Sunken Temple is there to help more with the second part of the deck. You can draw cards with Irelia because she gets 5 just by untapping. Heart of Dark Ice makes all of your units basically get in that range, and then Stellacorn with a mask and 2 masks or a buff or a Heart of Dark Ice with any of that, again, can draw another card. But essentially the whole deck is built around these 2 parts and trying to utilize either the early game part to win the early game and try to get ahead in points, and then use the late game part just to finish the game, which is again why Purple Yasuo is here. He's better at ending the game. Or do it the opposite and try to rely on the late game part while utilizing the early part just to slow down the game enough to where Stellacorn and Irelia can be unstoppable because you have that many cards, and those 2 cards are very good in those late game grindy scenarios. So I think we utilize both parts well, and they work well with each other, which is very important, because usually decks that have these 2 specific parts covered, they don't work well together. So if you draw the wrong part in the wrong matchup, then you just lose. We still kind of had that problem, and that's one of the reasons why I lost. For example, one of the games I lost in Lille was to a Kai'Sa deck, because versus that deck you want to be the more grindy version, so you want to rely on Stellacorn, Irelia, and Zhonya's to protect those 2 rather than on 2-drops, and I just saw 0 Irelias and 0 Stellacorns in all 3 games, which you were just going to lose those. But again, we do it less than other decks because the deck is built around from these two parts interacting well together and them helping each other to see both parts. Okay, so specific cards, let's see battlefields first. Targon's Peak, Seat of Power, Sunken Temple are the battlefields of choice. Targon's Peak and Seat of Power, like I said, work with the early game package. Targon's Peak is just good. A lot of other decks play it, which might raise a red flag for some people, but I think we utilize it better than other decks because you do Targon's Peak always on the play. That is the only thing that is consistent in this, no matter the matchup. I think Targon's Peak on the play is correct because of the previously mentioned playline, which I think is very common. You play a 2-drop. You, on turn 1, you play a 2-drop on turn 2, and you use the legend to double conquer. After that, you're tapped out, so your opponent can easily trade into both. But with Targon's Peak, we do get to untap 2 and then keep our combo tricks up, which makes opponent less incentivized to do so. Trying to snowball from this scenario usually results in a win. If they're not allowed to retake, we're already 4 points up. The game is mostly over by that point. So having this battlefield as an auto win, usually people win the game on the play anyway, because that's just how the game is right now, sadly. But I think that battlefield is perfect for this. It was also, the battlefield was played in Season 1. Yasuo, I think most Yasuo's played now, so not much else to say about that. Seat of Power, I think, plays perfectly with our with our 9 2-drops. I mostly do it game 1, but there are some scenarios where I do that one on the draw. And I think it's good for both on the play and on the draw. Obviously, in game 1, it's random which one you get. Because, opponents can't really do what we can do and double score on turn 2. Mostly, some who play sneak and stuff can, but most of the opponents can't do that. And B, if opponents do that, we do get to punish them with... we have a lot of stuff that punishes them conquering, like Mask, Teemo, obviously our buffs, and just having like efficient 2-drops that want to trade, like Lonely Portal. With all of that, we fight for that early game presence, and I think this battlefield is perfect for us because we are both built into fighting for that early game, and also most other decks are not good at it at all. But I think no decks are as good as we are in this specific strategy. The games where I do start with Sunken Temple over Seat of Power are the ones where I plan to sideboard some of the 2-drops out. No, sorry, the other way around. If I'm planning to sideboard out the 5-drops, like if I'm planning to sideboard out the Irelias, if the matchup is that fast, then I do Sunken Temple early game, because... sorry, not early game, game 1, because I'm just going to be able to use it less later, and then might as well use it on the game where I do have the Dark Ices and the Irelias. I think Viktor is one of those matchups. Trying to remember now. I'll show you guys the sideboard plan where that is mentioned later. I think Rek'sai was one of those, and like Master Yi or something. But essentially that is the logic behind it, so you can do your own math and see. Because the sideboard plan isn't perfectly thought out. It was something I came up with pretty fast before the tournament. So, but the general logic is still there. Sunken Temple, again, like I said, we have some ways to do it, and most other decks can't proc it anyway. So it's a good third battlefield. I think if one of them is going to change, it's that one. I think the other two are very good. So yeah. The next one I would like to talk about would be the Chosen Champion. So I've opted to go for the purple one because I think in most matchups neither of the two champs are good, but the most matchups, the matchups you're gonna see the most are Irelia and Kai'Sa, followed by, I thought Viktor was gonna be top 3 or 4 most played. And in all 3 of those, the green one is awful. The purple one is still not good, but it's less bad than the green one. But sometimes what the purple one does, it's obviously cheaper, So it's not more efficiently statted because it's 5 for 4 rather than 6 for 6, but paying a mana less and just sometimes being able to utilize the last point is very important. I think where the purple one shines the most is, how to explain this. He's like aura farming, and what I mean by that is he just stands in the champion zone, and if the opponent is aware of it, which most of them will be, opponent is not allowed to do the classical play of getting to 6 and then fall back to do a double conquer if you're at 5, because you're going to get the 8 point with the Yasuo, right? Because if they're at 6 and you're at 5, you can double score to 7 yourself and then do Yasuo plus Ride the Wind plus Legend with 9 mana total, and that just gets you the last point. So him just existing, even if you don't play him, provides a lot of value to the deck, because opponent is forced to hold in scenarios where they wouldn't hold otherwise. And like I mentioned previously, the game is made in such a way where there is an attacker's advantage due to all that when I attack effects, due to the way mana works and all of that. So you forcing opponents into these spots, I think it gives purple a huge edge. So I think it's just wrong to play the green one right now, even though there's technically more matchups where the green one would carry. That's why we have him in the sideboard, for those matchups that we can put him in to do the carry thing. So the matchups that the green one would carry in would be primarily Draven, because they have a lot of big units, and their interaction for Yasuo is action speed, which means it happens only after Yasuo strikes. So that is usually too late for that because he has already killed an important unit. It is good versus orange decks. The very important thing about green Yasuo, same as the Draven matchup, is the fact that a lot of very impactful cards that are meta nowadays are like Rebuke and Punch First are the two that I would like to note the most of, and both of them are action speed. And both of those things, specifically the Punch First, like I mentioned previously, Rebuke doesn't hurt us that much, but Punch First specifically is hard to beat for our deck because we're not good at reaching that much might, and Yasuo gets to kill those units before the Punch First gets to be casted. So relying on Yasuo in the orange matchups, I think is very good. And I think he does fill a hole that the deck has. I think when I was playing Irelia even, there are certain spots where not even Irelia, with the finances and everything, can catch up in might of orange decks. So, and we definitely go way less tall than Irelia does, so having Yasuo to clear that up is very important. I think I also play it versus Rek'sai, and I think that's it for the matchups that the Yasuo comes in. The green one, sorry. But that's still very important because having one sideboard slot to carry a lot of these matchups is pretty good. Next, I would like to go over I'll just skim over the cards that most people play anyway, and I'll just maybe talk about numbers or why the specific choices were made. So specifically for the 9 2-drops, I was trying to get 2-drops that were a combination of a good early game, because that is going to be the core of your gameplay for the first few turns. But I also want them to be not terrible late game, and I think all of these fit both of those perfectly. Lonely Porter is the best 2-drop to play on turn 1 because he's going to either score or do anything another 2-drop can, and he's very, very likely going to recycle himself and draw a card, and that is exactly what we want. He's perfect, which is why he's a free of. And then the Tide Turner and the Merchant have a synergy early game where they get to cycle and fix your hand. Tide Turner being very good late game because he works with Yasuo, he works with Telecorn, and if you draw him as the only 2-drop early game, he can score still. Teemo is a very cool thing to have in the deck, and I think one of Teemo is correct. I wouldn't play more because drawing multiple is bricky. he's very good as the second 2-drop that you draw. So if he's the only one, he's bad because you need to play him turn 1. He doesn't do anything, he just has 1 might. But specifically with Yasuo, with the legend power, he's 4 mana with 4 might accelerated, which is insane. That's like better rate than I think most other accelerates, if not all of them. he can be hidden, and he's very good at, when you're going second, at doing the play him and push him with a legend to do the second conquer, right? So we play, let's say, a Poto on turn 1. Opponent plays, if opponent goes first, the opponent plays a 2-drop, you play Poto or Merchant or whatever. Opponent goes into a battlefield, your Poto or Merchant goes into the other battlefield, and then you go Teemo, which is now a 4, you push him in, kill their 2-drop, you double score, do the classical thing without any downsides, and you kill their unit, which is very good. Another thing that Teemo does really well is the hidden tomfoolery. So we have Teemo, we have Tide Turner, we have Switcheroo, that are all hidden, and they obviously, there's no, sadly, fight or flight anymore, but opponents seeing Teemo once will make them play around it the whole time, which is very good for you, so sometimes you even side them out when that happens. Another important thing that I forgot to mention with all the hiddens is Seat of Power baits the opponent a lot of times into attacking in certain order. They usually are incentivized to go to the other battlefield first and then do Seat of Power second, and then you can present your hiddens in such a way to counter that, right? If you know they're gonna go into the other battlefield first, maybe you have Irelia there, and then you can hide a Tide Turner on the other one, so they have to commit a lot of might to kill the Irelia, and then you just switch and let them kill a Tide Turner, and then Irelia is safe on the other battlefield, and they can never take the Seat of Power, just for one example. So yeah, that's it for the 2-drops. The next thing I would like to go over, sorry, are the buffs. So there's a classic triple discipline, triple on guard. You have to play that. We don't need to talk about it. The interesting things are the masks and the Heart of Dark Ices, or Hearts of Dark Ice, whatever. I think those choices over something else is what brought me most of the success in the game, in the tournament. Sorry, and I think that is due to 2 specific things. So the first one is we don't have a lot of buffs because we don't. Irelia is allowed to, for example, play 9 buffs, whereas we have only 6 because we're not allowed to play Define Dance. So we do need to put something else, because late game you're just not gonna have enough buffs when you need to. And the second more important part is, if we're fighting early game a lot, which we are way more than Irelia, we're using these buffs on our 2-drops to be their 2-drops or 3-drops or whatever is happening. And if you keep doing that for a few turns, you will run out of buffs in the deck. So it's not even about, okay, I can just draw 6 more cards. You can, like, let's say we spend 3 out of our 6 buffs on turns 2, 3, 4, and then we magically have a Stellacorn that draws us 6 cards. The problem isn't the amount of cards, the density of the buffs in the deck is just not that high. So after you have casted, let's say 2 or 3 buffs, even 1 sometimes, you need to basically, after you've drawn a half of your deck, which is a lot, you're not gonna see the other 3 most likely. And with that being the case, we the only way to do that, which is what Irelia does best, is not use the buffs early game, but use equipment, for example, which is reusable. And this is basically our version of that. Mask and Heart, the most important thing is they're reusable. So you do get benefit from it, from fighting consistently throughout the game, rather than just spiking late game when you need to do one big fight to protect your Irelia or to punch through a huge board or whatever is happening. So the one thing that I regret not doing before the tournament, I wanted to do it but I didn't bring a third mask, was to switch a third Ride the Wind for a third Mask of Foresight before the tournament. I think that choice is still correct. That is the only thing that I would change after the tournament in hindsight. Again, I was gonna do it even before, but I didn't bring the third mask, and I didn't want to risk not being able to get it from a vendor tomorrow, so this is what I played. So yeah, I think both of these are very important for the deck. Cute interaction with mask, which you might know, is it procs multiple times in a turn. So you do get to, for example, play a 2-drop, go into their 2-drop, killing your 2-drop grows to 3 from the mask, and kills there for free, which is insane already. But you also get to charm, for example, their Stellacorn, which happened once, and you kill that also for free, because now your 2-drop goes to 4 and kills a Stellacorn. Sometimes it just trades with a Kai'Sa or whatever it is. It is just very good, proccing it multiple times. It's not super easy, it works with charms, it works with Ride the Wind. Sometimes, for example, a lot of the hiddens are good because we have hidden units in Teemo and Tideturner, and you let them attack, proccing the mask while your unit is alone, and then you swap a unit in, or you show a Teemo or whatever, and then you are not only attacking with 2 units, but you already have a buff on one of them, which is again very good. If there is also a cute trick which works if they go into battlefield and then you're having like a fight off, and they for example rebuke, let's say it was Irelia that was alone, and then there's a hidden Tideturner on the battlefield. Because if they rebuke Irelia, we're still in combat. You can show your Tideturner then, and when it's targeting something before it swaps out, it's going to buff itself because it's alone at that point. So it's going to go to 3, it's going to swap another unit in, and that is going to get a buff as well. So the mask in this scenario has procced like 3 times, once on Irelia, once on Tideturner, once on whatever it's being swapped in, which is like insane amounts of value. Thankfully, I didn't have to use the cheese because opponents were pretty good in a tournament, but a lot of times when opponents are not paying attention, they also forget about mask because people are not used to playing against it, so you just get a free trade. Sometimes people just attack, hoping to trade their 2-drop into your 2-drop, but you have mask, so they just lose. It didn't happen, again, thankfully. I don't like to win with those sort of cheeses, but it is a thing that happens sometimes, so if you like catching your opponents off guard, same as the Legend, it does work sometimes. Next part, Azonia versus Guardian Angel, like I talked a bit about. We just don't want to use power. It is slightly awkward with a lot of 2-drops that we play, so you have to be kind of careful of when you're leaving your 2-drops exposed so that unproc Zonias. But it has been fine for the most part because you can hide it on the battlefield where Stellacorn or Irelia is, making sure that that's the one that's being saved by it. The next important thing that I would talk about is Switcheroo. Switcheroo is another thing that I did mostly for the orange decks because I think a lot of orange decks are bad matchups, and we're not good at reaching certain levels of might. Switcheroo is very good because it works versus, again, we have a lot of very small units which work really well with Switcheroo. I think it's better than Rebuke. It is very good into Rally as well because a lot of times you would rather kill it than bounce it, unless they have a Guardian Angel. But we have Adaptatrons in the sideboard to cover that. It's also very, very good into Watcher, whereas Rebuke isn't as good, because once they minus all your stuff, they usually need to walk in with Watcher, and usually at that point your unit is 1 might, and that swap is, what, like 6? That's a 12 might swing, which usually opponents cannot recover from. And it has won me a couple of games. I think it was in the pre-regional qualifier, they're not in the actual main event. And then there's a slight awkward thing with Irelia, because technically when you you're on Irelia, sorry. Because when you target your Irelia and something else with Switcheroo, your Irelia grows first from the trigger and then it swaps. That's kind of an anti-synergy, but it's really, really good with the rest of the deck. Another cool case with Switcheroo that I used was opponent attacked with their 2-drop with a longsword, so it was 4 might, into my 2-drop. I had a mask and a hidden Switcheroo there, and I knew they had another longsword, I believe. So what they were gonna do is just walk in, I grow to 3, they are 4, and then if I do a buff, they have to go up again to 6, which they're fine with. But I responded to my mask trigger, which was about to buff my 2-drop to a 3. I responded to that with a hidden switcheroo, which you can do because hidden cards have reaction speed. I swapped, making my unit a 4, and there's a 2, and then the mask resolved, making my unit a 5, and there are 2, and then the longsword they had in hand wasn't enough to go over my unit, which is just a cool little trick. Also, what happens pretty often is you hide switcheroo in one battlefield, Titan or another, and then you hide the switcheroo on the battlefield where Irelia is, and then when you swap them, the Titan is going to come to the battlefield where switcheroo is, and he's very small, so the switcheroo becomes much stronger. So that's a very good card. I think it's the one scenario where switcheroo is worse than rebuke, obviously, is the Forerunners, which is why I have rebukes in the sides. But in a lot of those matchups, you do side them out one for the other, or you play one switcheroo, 2 rebukes after it, or whatever you like to do. The last very important thing is the counter spells. So I had a hot take when the ban list happened, and I thought, because I was in Irelia back then, I thought the not so fast was incorrect to play even in Irelia. The reasoning for that was I thought that Rebuke would become much worse of a card with Draven's absence. I thought Draven was going to be much worse, but even without that, there is not a lot of scenarios where Rebuke is that important, and not so fast. Hard Bargain works in most spots where not so fast would work anyway. Plus, the existence of not so fast in most green-purple decks makes opponents need to play around it anyway. So you need your opponent, for example, for starters, to be a good player. They need to know what not so fast is, and they need to know that playing Singularity when into your Irelia and Stellacorn when you have 2 mana up, and just to get it not so fasted means that you're up 4 mana and you likely just win the game, especially because they have to recycle for Deflect. So a lot of times they're not going to opt into those plays anyway, and B, most of these times, like Singularity or something similar, Hard Bargain catches anyway. The upsides of Hard Bargain versus Not So Fast are the Imperial Decree, which I expected a lot, Time Warp, which I expected a lot, and most importantly, Punch First. Punch First, the only way to counter it is Hard Bargain, and what orange decks do a lot is leave 1 or 2 mana up just for Punch First, and you just Hard Bargain it. It's very good. I think it's correct to play 2 Hard Bargains, and I think Not So Fast is not needed, especially in this deck. I think in Irelia it's close. You might want to play some Not So Fast, but in this version for sure, because Rebuke doesn't hurt us that much. The only thing that I would want Not So Fast, and that I did want Not So Fast versus, was Falling Star, but you can just play early game differently around Falling Star, knowing that they might have it. Another important thing in Hard Bargain is it's better versus Irelia because, and other green decks, because it's useful in counter wars. A lot of times we want to get our Charm through, or a Switcheroo through, or our Rebuke post sideboard, and they not so fast it, and you have Defy, they have Defy, or whatever. If I have a not so fast, I can't use it anywhere in the chain, because they just do counter spells, and the only thing targeting is my spell. So Not So Fast doesn't work, whereas Hard Bargain does work in those scenarios and helps you push that thing through. So in a large chain counter wars, it is useful. It is also pretty good having a second one. I won one of the only reason I won one of the games versus the Kai'Sa player that I lost to overall was because I managed to counter the second Time Warp. They played the first Time Warp, I had nothing, I Hard Bargained it, they're like, okay, the second one surely goes through. I countered the second one as well. They were obviously surprised, nobody plays two Hard Bargains. That was game 1, I believe. And that's what won me the game. So I think Hard Bargain is very good. I think Triple Defy was necessary for all the early game that people are playing. other green decks versus Irelia need to define their Defiant Dance because that's the mirror breaker. That's the spell that you can't play. That's insanely good that they can, and it's just a good card. You have to play triple Defy. Previously in the meta you didn't need to, but right now I think it's necessary. That is, I think, it. Let me just see if we went over everything. I think those are most of the things that I wanted to talk about for the card choices. We can just finish off with a quick sideboard guide, and that is it. Okay, so for the sideboard and matchup part of the guide, this part is probably going to be the most likely to be incorrect, let's say, because you need a lot of testing to get this perfectly right. And I kind of rushed the whole sideboard guide for myself before Lille. I just wrote it on a piece of paper, just what I thought the ins and outs were. This is kind of similar to that. I tried to slightly work a bit more from what I did during the tournament because I did change some stuff on the fly during the tournament, and also some stuff I changed now after the whole experience and after thinking about it a bit more. But this is just gonna give you a rough ideas on where to start off with, and then maybe if you have experience yourself or talk to other people and see over time how this evolves, maybe which choices are more correct than others. But it's definitely a good baseline for you guys. You will have a link in the description with the whole thing. So let's just get started. Rek'sai is an interesting matchup because it mostly relies on what they flip from the legend. I think the matchup is like 50-50-ish. It's definitely better for us than it is for Irelia because of a lot of our 2-drops, which invalidates their Call the Weak. And it helps us fight more of their early game with our 2-drops, so you just definitely stop them from conquering early and snowballing the game, which we're pretty decent into. We're siding out the Switcheroo and the Hard Bargain. They don't have that many spells to counter, and the Switcheroo, they don't really have that many big targets. Charm is obviously there to just fight for the board early, because if you kill the unit in base, they can't conquer with it, and they can't proc their legend. If you ever stop them from procking a legend, even for one turn, but definitely multiple, the game is over. They can't catch back up because the deck is pretty weak without the free cards Rek'sai provides. Rebuke is there to hit the Forerunners. That's basically it. This is one of the matchups where you swap the Chosen Champion, which is here in the description of the sideboard guide. You can't, as far as I'm aware, put the champion in and out for the Piltover guide, so I just did it this way. Hopefully people notice. Next one will be Irelia. I think this is probably our most favorite matchup. I think it might be largely biased because I know how to play both sides really well, so it's easy for me to navigate it. On a perfect level of play from everybody, I'm not sure what would be the easiest or the hardest, but I felt this one is super favorite, and the results show that again. We remove these cards. The only reason I'm removing Switcheroo on the play is because we're putting in Rebukes, and you don't want too many of those cards in your hand, clogging it. Once you're ahead going first, you're trying to just snowball the points and close the game out pretty fast. You don't need protection because you have a lot of threats. If they kill Stellacorn or Irelia, it's usually through Charm, and Stellacorn will draw an extra card. Irelia will cycle 2 runes, so it's usually pretty fine if any of that happens. The stag deck usually goes out on the play because we have even mana. It's perfect. You go 2-drop plus 2-drop in Legend or Stellacorn or something. You don't have 1 mana extra usually, so stag deck is not that good. You will see this across multiple matchups. That is what we do. And then in putting in these cards, it just makes sense. They have gears. You want to kill their key threats with Charm, and Rebuke is just good versus them. Going second, it's slightly different. So we just put out Traveling Merchants instead of the Switcheroo and the Stag deck, because Stag deck versus Traveling Merchant is what we do again in multiple matchups, and the Switcheroo, when we're behind because we're going second, we're slightly slower. If they have 2-drops and stuff, we may have to catch up back in points, and then we might need to fight more often. So having a more clunky hand, which is maybe bricked with multiple Switcheroos and Rebukes, is a risk that I'm willing to take. The matchup usually plays out by dancing around the mana and who will tap out or tap low first. If they don't tap low, you get to go in with the Stellacorn to battlefield and then push the Stellacorn back out with the legend. A lot of times on 6 mana, I even go in with my 2-drop, or not go in. It's usually stuck there from turn 2. So when you untap on turn 3 with 6 mana, the 2-drop is usually there. You place Stellacorn on the battlefield and you just push it back to base, fully tapping out to draw a card. And if they charm it, then Stellacorn already drew 2 cards, you're fine. But it's basically this dance of if they leave mana up, you just eat their mana by fully tapping out or almost fully tapping out by drawing cards and just developing. Or if they don't leave mana up, you get to fight them on the battlefield or with a charm. So, and it's harder for them to not leave stuff of the battlefield because the legend they have requires a card and a power, so they don't just get to bring their Stellacorn back for free as we do. So it's like this dance that we just happen to be very favored in, and I think that's usually how you win. We spoke more about it in the first segment, so you can just go back to that if you missed it. Kai'Sa is one of the most grindy matchups. You put in Zhonya's and Irelia's in, or a Zhonya and an Irelia, a third of each. And you just want that density because they just remove your thing. That usually very heavily favors you because if Stellacorn lives for a turn ever and you get to untap, you almost always win because it just starts drawing infinite cards and then it's very hard to kill after that. And Irelia requires them to recycle a lot of runes, so it's just not worth it for them to kill multiple Aurelias that way. Rebuke is we only add 1 instead of 2 because sometimes they add the Forerunners versus us because they see we have a lot of units and not that many interactive spells, so they try to fight us on the board, and then we have a Rebuke to hedge that. Some don't because they're already scared of Rebuke, but if you show them a switcheroo and stuff, they might be more inclined to because usually, logically, switcheroo is in place of the Rebuke, so they might be more willing to do that. Ride the Wind is a synergy card, which doesn't work well in one-to-one card trading scenarios, so we sideboard that one out, and then the stag deck is for a merchant again. The second merchant comes out for a charm when we're going second to try claw back out on the board. Again, something you'll see across multiple matchups. But yeah, it's usually just a grind fest, not allowing them to score early too fast and keeping mana for time warps and stuff later on, trying to beat the Watchers as well. The Kai'Sa deck kind of plays similar to ours, where it has 2 distinct parts. It has this early game with a lot of efficient removal in units, and then it has like Darius, Watcher, Darius less so, but Watcher and Time Warp to end out the games. So if you are aware of how your deck works, theirs works in a similar way. So try to align them properly to see which part you can beat and who snowballs and stuff like that. Viktor is next. Viktor is also, I believe, a favorite matchup. It is much better than Irelia's matchup due to mostly, again, Call the Weak. But we also have like very efficient ways with Mask to trade into their 2-drops. Our 2-drops get to beat their tokens, which removes their clock entirely, which is very important, which is why Irelia struggles in this matchup, kind of. I think Irelia is still like favored if they're good, but it depends on the draws, obviously. But our deck is just like so much better positioned into this. We remove Switcheroo and Heart of Dark Ice because we don't care about size that much, and this is one of the matchups where we're going Temple game 1 because we are removing Heart of Dark Ice and all of our 2-drops stay. So Temple game 1 because we have Dark Ice and later we won't, so there's less chances to conquer Temple, and the 2-drops are staying, so might as well just do the 2-drops with the Seat of Power on when you're on the draw. We're putting in, again, same as versus Kai'Sa, just threat density and then charm to fight the early game units they have because they play Zin and stuff now. It's a similar matchup to Kai'Sa where you just grind through the points, but they have a bit more units nowadays with the Zin and stuff, like I said, to fight your early game. Master Yi, I believe, is the hardest out of the meta decks from my experience at least. We have green Yasuo coming in because again it's there for the orange decks. It is difficult because they go very tall, but depending on how the game pans out and how many buffs each side draws, you can win. A thing I forgot to note in the card part is when you're playing versus orange, make sure you tap your Heart of Dark Ice every turn versus orange, even when you're not using it, because if Akshan steals it, he doesn't untap it, so they don't get to use it on their turn, which is sometimes going to be relevant. So just get into habit of tapping it just in case. You can make it look like it's immune versus the opponent, but it's actually useful sometimes. So that's another tip. Might as well mention it now. This is one of the matchups where we swap the chosen champion and we start game Temple game 1. This is also one of the only matchups where I considered playing what's it called? Target Speak, not on the play, because they have this very weird thing where usually when they go into battlefield, you don't want to fight them, right? But you're usually fine not fighting them, except when they're on the Grove, because they just keep drawing cards and then you can never catch back up. So I thought about how to place battlefield versus that. It didn't really come to any special conclusions, but if you want to invest more time and stuff and testing, thinking about that, there is definitely some strategy that can play around that specific thing, because I think that's the thing where we're the weakest, or the Yi is the strongest. The cards are pretty straightforward, not much to say. Hard bargain, even though it's orange and we want it for punch first and we want it for the counter wars, Yi usually doesn't tap out that much, because when they have a unit on each battlefield and they're decent, they don't need to. They just keep like disciplines and all that stuff up, so it's not just punch first, so they keep more mana up, so hard bargain is worse. I would probably still keep one in, but just keep in mind. And then we're doing a similar thing. You don't need protection versus versus you can usually just defy their charm. If they have a defy for your defy, it is what it is. Again, it's an unfavored matchup. We have to take some sacrifices, and I think Zhonya's is not that worth in a lot of scenarios where they don't have a charm. So might as well just sideboard it out. I did beat a Yi during the tournament though, so that's good. Azir, we have Switcheroo out and a stack deck, because they don't go that tall, so Switcheroo is useless, and then Adaptatron versus all the gears obviously carries. I used to have triple Adaptatron in the sideboard, but I decided to remove one in favor of adding a second Rebuke. We are adding Zhonya's, I think, going first to protect our Adaptatrons and Celicorns, and then going second, Charm to again catch back up. This matchup is mostly just reliant on the trying to get the points early, not allowing them to get a huge board, so make sure you're trading the whole time, because once they get a huge amount of stats, you can't really cut through that very easily. So the best is obviously just getting an Adaptatron and just keep making sure their board is clean. I guess versus Master Yi, I didn't mention, the game plan is obviously the same as for most decks. Try to be the first on the battlefield and try to snowball the game, because they do the same, and once they're established on a board with a full untapped mana, it's very hard to get them back. So it's this game of chicken, similar to Irelia, but again different, because they get stats from just existing, where if they have a lot of mana open, you're not allowed to go versus them, and then you can develop, and hopefully just by raw might of units you play, you get to attack next turn when you both have full untapped mana. Green Yasuo obviously helps a lot in that. Fiora is another orange deck, so we put Green Yasuo in here. We remove these cards. It's pretty straightforward. Didn't play versus any Fioras. Maybe actually ever with Yasuo. I might have played it once, but I've seen how a lot of the decks play out. And this is definitely, it's basically just like a stat fight, which we should be fine into. I've heard from other people that Fiora is difficult into Yasuo, but again, I really experienced it myself, so I can't speak a lot on it. But this is what I would do in theory versus it. If they're on the hook version, you can obviously put Adapatrons in versus instead of something else. But this is it for the regular version. So into Draven, we have these ins and outs. Funnily enough, actually, I didn't have Draven on my sideboard plan in Lille. I forgot to put him in there, and versus the one Draven that I played into, I think it was like round 3, I want to say. This was the ins and outs. Approximately, this is what I did. I believe that Zhonya's comes out in the green purple versus Draven matchup. I used to do that when I was playing Irelia into it, and I still think it's correct. It's mostly good versus big board stacks, which doesn't really happen that often anymore with Draven. It used to happen in Miracle a lot, and it's good versus Falling Star. All the times they side with Falling Star anyway, because of Not So Fast, and because it's not really that good into Irelia anyway. It does hurt when they Falling Star or Stellacorn and stuff, but it's fine. It's not worth keeping in the deck just for that, in my opinion. We do swap the Chosen Champion here again to the green one. We side out the regular stag deck, and then we side out the Ride the Wind. Again, switching Merchant instead of stag deck for going second. And then we put Charmin. Charmin is very good because they operate like on a medium amount of units, and if we can get like a value trade in onto a Kaisa or a Darius or whatever else is pretty good. We put in Rebukes for the Forerunners again, and we just put in Irelia instead of the Zhonyas for more threat density. Their units are usually like not that large that Irelia can outsize them herself without much help, especially with the Dark Ice. It's more than good enough. And that's it for the Draven matchup. Usually the gameplay is you try to snowball because you're both kind of like board presence decks. You try to fight for the early game, kind of similar versus any, and you just try to not fall too far behind on tempo while not losing units to like Falling Star or to like an Axe in combat, stuff like that. As long as you can keep up tempo with that, you're usually fine, and our stuff is just more efficient at doing those things. So I think this matchup is like slightly favored for us, but yeah, it's evenish. It's not strongly swinging either way because they're both like fair mid-range decks based on value and just good stuff, and we're both pretty good at combat. So one thing to note is you don't want to allow them to go to 6 with Brynir and stuff, same as with Irelia, because they will just close the game out likely. But our 1+ here is we have Yasuo, so they can't go to 6 if we're in 5. That's only true game 1 because we switch them out, but it's still something to keep note of. Also, if you hide Teemo and stuff, you can proc a lot of stuff before the Brynir resolves and get power that way, but we don't really have that many combo tricks and stuff anyway, so yeah. Okay, as for Lucian, this matchup is 50-50-ish. It used to be very hard when I was playing Irelia, but I think it's slightly improved on Yasuo because we do have better early game, so we can race more. It is difficult on Irelia, not presumably, but mainly because they do go larger than us, which is not very common as an Irelia player. So that makes the whole situation difficult. You kind of have to get them on the defense to fight their size because Lucian Legend is just it makes the unit huge in offense. I think we're also slightly benefiting because we get more interaction. We have double rebuke and double switcheroo postboard, and we use the Adapatron better than Irelia does, so that kind of balances it out, brings it closer to 50-50 matchup. I think we do game 1 Temple because we side out the Heart of Dark Ices. And we have less ways to proc the battlefield. Going second, it's the same thing as always, removing the stag deck or putting back in stag deck instead of a merchant. And we're moving Heart of Dark Ice and Teemo because they're only useful on the offense, but they usually don't stand on the battlefield, so we can't really utilize them properly. Sometimes you even need to trauma unit in to give them a point so you can walk into the unit and kill it. It's a sometimes necessary play, but yeah, it's mostly just a dance of who can keep who off battlefields and who has point tempo, because they're very fast deck and very unstoppable on certain hands. So keep that in mind. That's what the gameplay is about. If you can just get Adaptatron, it usually wins. Without gears, they don't do anything. Last but not least, we have Ezreal. Ezreal is... it has a lot of different lists, so it's very hard to say overall what the best plan is. But switcheroos are mostly just bad. They're only good versus exactly Watcher, but even then it's like not that great, because they have minuses and rebukes and stuff, so when you switch they can just rebuke and you didn't do anything if you don't end up trading and their Watcher survives. You put in more grindy stuff like Irelia and Zanya's, you put in Charm to trade. I've seen a lot of Ezreal's play tempo versions now. I haven't really tried playing into it. I tested mostly with Alan, and this is approximately what I liked putting in and out. He specifically does play Vex, and I think a lot of Ezreals do have Vex in the sideboard for their early matchup, so they would probably bring it in versus us as well. And if that's the case, if you know they're on Vex or you see a Vex, I would swap the champions, because Green Yasuo beats Vex before they get to cast Rebuke or anything discounted. They do have some minuses, like I think they're on 2 or 3 total of Smokescreen and the Ice Touch, whatever it's called, the -4s. But if you can Heart of Dark Arts your Yasuo before he goes into combat, your Yasuo is a 9, -4 is still a 5, it's enough to kill a Vex. So sometimes you can even defy it in combat, it's worth it, because if Vex dies from the strike, then if they rebuke Yasuo after that, it's not really that big a deal. They're paying full price for it, and he already killed the Vex, which is insane. So that's mostly how the matchup revolves around that, around Vex, and usually it's just like a grind fest with some tempo, because they do have pretty decent early game, especially if they're on the triple Gus, triple bird list. So keep that in mind to try to figure out what list they're on and sideboard accordingly. I think going second, we're just swapping. We're swapping the same thing against that deck for Traveling Merchant. Everything else is pretty regular. So that's it for the sideboard guide. And yeah. Okay, that's it for today's video. Thank you guys for watching. I don't know if you noticed, but it's been 6 hours since you started watching this. No, I'm just kidding. I had a few things come up, so we had to do multiple cuts, but hopefully it turns out okay. But yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, or at least find it somewhat informative. I don't know what we'll do next, because I don't really do content anymore, so there's nothing really planned right now, but if you guys have anything specific that you want to see, you can leave it down in the comments. Also, if you have any questions about stuff that you're curious about that I might have missed, let me know as well. But for my next venture, I will probably do Utrecht. I think I'm doing Yasuo there as well. I'll likely stick to Yasuo till it rotates out. Well, not sure fully rotates out, at least till the metal is available, which will be end of set 3, start of set 4. And I already have some ideas for a cool set 3 build. We'll see how that turns out. And if nothing else, I'll hopefully see you guys there. But yeah, that is it. Thank you for watching again for the 4th time. Hopefully you have a nice rest of the day, and goodbye.